Ideological differences between the US and the USSR. The primary cause of the Cold War was the stark ideological divide between the United States and the Soviet Union. The US championed capitalism, democracy, and individual freedoms, while the USSR promoted communism, state control, and the one-party system. This fundamental difference in political and economic systems fueled tensions and mutual distrust. Post-World War II power vacuum. The power vacuum left by World War II played a significant role in the Cold War's emergence. Europe and much of Asia were devastated, leaving the US and USSR as the two dominant global superpowers. As these nations competed for influence, they clashed over how to shape the post-war world order, leading to a struggle for control in various regions. The Soviet expansion and buffer zones. After World War II, the Soviet Union sought to expand its influence in Eastern Europe, establishing communist governments in several countries as a buffer against future invasions. This expansion was perceived as a direct threat to Western democratic nations, particularly the US, which sought to prevent the spread of communism through policies like containment. The Marshall Plan and economic competition. The US implemented the Marshall Plan in 1948 to help rebuild Western Europe, offering economic aid to prevent the spread of communism. The Soviet Union saw this as an attempt to create a capitalist bloc and responded by tightening control over Eastern Europe. This economic competition exacerbated the ideological divide and set the stage for the Cold War. The Berlin blockade and airlift. One of the early flashpoints of the Cold War was the Berlin blockade of 1948–1949. The Soviet Union blocked access to West Berlin, hoping to force the Allies out of the city. In response, the US and its allies launched the Berlin airlift, supplying West Berlin with food and supplies. This event heightened tensions and solidified the division of Germany. The arms race and nuclear threat. The development and use of nuclear weapons by the US at the end of World War II introduced a new and terrifying dimension to global politics. The USSR quickly sought to develop its own nuclear weapons, leading to an arms race between the two superpowers. The constant threat of nuclear war became a defining characteristic of the Cold War. The Korean War and proxy conflicts. The Cold War manifested through a series of proxy wars, with the US and USSR supporting opposing sides in conflicts around the world. The Korean War, 1950–1953, was one of the first significant Cold War confrontations, with the US backing South Korea and the USSR supporting North Korea. These proxy wars further entrenched the rivalry between the two superpowers. The Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of the US, triggering a tense 13-day standoff. The crisis highlighted the dangers of the Cold War and the potential for catastrophic escalation, pushing both nations to pursue arms control agreements in subsequent years. The space race and technological competition. The Cold War also played out in the realm of technology, particularly during the space race. Both the US and the Soviet Union sought to demonstrate their technological superiority through space exploration. The Soviet Union's successful launch of Sputnik in 1957 and the US landing of Apollo 11 on the Moon in 1969 were key moments in this technological rivalry. Long-term distrust and geopolitical rivalries. Even after the end of World War II, the long-standing distrust between the US and USSR, shaped by years of competition, espionage, and ideological conflict, kept tensions high. Both nations aimed to expand their influence globally, and this geopolitical rivalry fueled the Cold War for nearly half a century, with each side vying for dominance in political, military, and cultural spheres.